Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business. Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
Three cheers for Batman. Where's my pen? There's my pen. Where's my other pen? Because I'm gonna need the other pen. Guys, you seen my pen? There it is.
Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
Spud Gun McGee. You're that boy, right? You don't have to answer. I know you're that boy.
He went on a 3-week video game bender that cost him his health, job, and wife.
This is not Overwatch. Ster, why?
Are you tired of peeling potatoes? Yeah.
It's actually really weird. Well, it felt really weird. When I was tweeting about Fallout streams, there was like 2 or 3 people that were like, I miss Overwatch. When are you coming back to Overwatch? Felt very strange that there was anyone that watched me, honestly, that was like, you know what? I don't understand why you're not playing Overwatch. I enjoy your streams. I've seen all your Overwatch streams, but I just don't get why you're not playing it. I don't know how you could see that many and not be like, oh, I guess you finally gave up on it. I don't know.
Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
Hope. Pipe Roast, Alien Action. Thanks also, Toppy's-kun, Tier 3, you're a big boy. And I love you big time. As well as B-Taco, Tier 2, also big boy. Your clock is wrong, it's 5 p.m. CST. It is wrong. It's also the 7th. It's not Thursday. There's a lot wrong here. No, it's not so much why are you not playing game I like. It's more so just if you like the Overwatch streams and you'd seen enough them to like them, I feel like you'd have a clue as to why I wasn't playing it. You know, it was only just like 2 years of non-stop complaints about them doing things wrong. And I finally gave up on the hope that they would do things right. Because evidence over and over again that they have no intention of correcting their problems.
We're gonna play a ballad.
Oh, they're gonna play a ballad. The only thing going for Overwatch is there's no other game. But that's not good enough for me anymore. What brand of ping pong paddle do you use? Do you like? I haven't played in a while. I play Penhold. And I have... Shit, what did I have? I have like 3, honestly. I think one of the last ones... Why is this question so intriguing to me right now? I really do want to go. I keep... Like, I haven't gone, but I really do want to actually... Hold on. I'm very curious. Shit.
Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business. Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
Ping pong's your true passion, don't deny it. I just need to stop being such a fat lazy boy and actually leave my house. The last one I was using was the Stiga Intensity Carbon. Penhold blade. Generally, I don't like Stiga that much, but it's a pretty nice blade. I had another... whatchamacallit. I don't remember the name of this one, it doesn't have it on it. Well, it does, but it's in Chinese, so I don't remember. It was one of the Ma Long blades. It was, I like it, but I wanted something a little bit slower. It's really fast. Ster, I appreciate you, bud. Fuck off! What was it? Some dude just... it doesn't matter. I was gonna talk about that. Are we playing CSGO BR? Nah. I watched a little bit of it. It didn't look that fun. I don't know, I kind of was excited about it until I watched it. It was just kind of like, eh. I don't know, felt like a classic old Gmod server kind of thing. Ah, shit, I might have to restart my computer. There's a chance, let me see, hold on. I know we haven't gotten anywhere yet. Fuck, I do. That's my tablet doesn't work unless I restart my computer. Unless there's some way I can... Somebody who knows tablets well, that I can jumpstart this boy. I know the problem. Ronnie knows the problem. I'll send you a bat file. Okay. Happens a lot. Like, if my tablet isn't plugged in when my computer starts, it doesn't work until I restart my computer. Right click, fix issue. Yeah, I'll try it. You send it to me on Discord, how you did. I think John was here one time, explained to me a way to fix this as well, but I don't remember what it was. I don't think that worked, Ronnie. Okay, that worked, Ronnie. Thank you. Let me make sure. Fuck, I might have the tier 2 problem.
Pleasure doing business.
I might have to restart anyway. I'm gonna restart Photoshop. Hold on. Because now it's not, it's working, but there's no pressure sensitivity. Yeah, I'm restarting Photoshop. Don't leave us. Dude, I'll leave you faster than a bug leaves a horse. Okay, it works. Clap, 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 clap. Dude, my ears are like so itchy and dry. It's driving me crazy. Absolutely crazy. Cut them off? I'm close to it. Okay. Oh, thanks, Zeepak. And Two Hat Tim. He has a weird name, Dr. Beerdelicious. What's your favorite alcoholic beverage? I don't drink. I've never drank. I don't have vodka. You caught me. Well, it worked for Van Gogh? What worked for Van Gogh? Ronnie's batch file? Good job, Ronnie. Kawatan? Alright, so... this is gonna be a weird stream. I was debating, you know, whether or not to do it, but, you know, we're gonna try something different here and, you know, just chat about, you know, nerd things. The nerd things that interest me. Video games. Games. Don't have to be a video of the game. It could be a blank gray screen of the game. So I had been working on, if you hadn't heard from the Twitters or last time we talked about it a little bit during a Soul Calibur stream, essentially a D&D-like style character building combat situation for fun. I don't know why. I think one day I just had a bunch of ideas and I was like, I'm gonna you know, take notes. Oh, the most logical way to take notes is in map tools. I can actually make tokens for it. And then it became too easy to build on top of and I just kept going. But for fun, I know. That is the why. But I still don't really know where it's going. I know places it could go, but I don't actually know where it's going. But I do like where it is. We played a test game of it last night. Ronnie was there. My wife was there. My wife of many years. We have a loving marriage. Yeah, we do. And, Italics played. It was alright. But the current predicament that I'm thinking of, it was actually, I was trying to explain it to Ashley last night. It's very hard to explain what I feel like one of the problems is. And I want to redo, essentially like the whole, hold on, I have to do something so I can show you this. Can I do that? I can do that. Okay, so this is in map tools, which was just like a generic build-up of things. Like, it's very messy. This would be a spell list, but it's all built-in tokens so that it's easy to like bring someone into it, because you end up playing in map pools anyway. So if you wanted to know what a thing did, you're like, oh, what's that spell? You double-click on it and it has an explanation. So it's all kind of built in there. These big portraits would be the classes, and then below them were skill trees. So like on Rogue, originally I had like a winding ass confusing skill tree where things cost different amount of points, basic skill tree stuff, and then I didn't like how that was. So I thought, yeah, maybe it'd be easier if I just made it more clear and concise. So what's here is basically you're a rogue, and then you have different rows of abilities. So like this tree here is movement. So you start at the top, and then you go down and get various movement abilities. Hold on, I want to turn the music. I don't know. Is it too loud? Who knows? They're clapping for me. It makes me feel good when they clap. So what I have now is basically you pick a class, and then you get 2 skill points a level, because I want you to level quickly, but everything's very basic. So like, all you need to do when you level is say, okay, I want this one and I want this one now. Okay, ready to play, done. Like, it's very simple, but you level up very often. So that makes up for it. But the problem I'm finding is quite complicated. And there's already a lot of questions. Did you say how long you've been working on this? About a month, on and off. I stopped for like a week or two. This is a program called Map Tools, which is usually what we use to play D&D. So it's a Java program built for running D&D. But because it's like open source and it has customizable macros and it's very easy to, well, it's not easy to work with, but it has a lot of the groundwork done for, you know, building a D&D game that you can customize it to what you need. So there's a lot of shit I've done. Like, actually, if you look over here when you have a token selected, I have some simple things, like when you press attack, it's determining... There's no, like, dice roll for an attack. I was trying out the idea of just... Well, you want things to show up in the chat so you have a log of things, but also the attack has a critical hit, and if I press this enough times, there it was. So it's either you crit or you don't, because you pretty much always hit. Then there's hotkeys for, like, status effects. End turn buttons, which doesn't work apparently, found that out last night. You hover over the thing. Man, I'm like not zoomed in all the way. On the bottom left it shows movement, armor, HP, mana, just keeping it real simple. So even if you... Does this boy have mana? This is not what I wanted to be talking about, actually. There's actually buttons for adding mana. And there's a mana bar. So if you know, spend mana, shows on the character, relevant. So Ster, what are those abilities to the right of the rogue, for example? Well, let's go back to talking about classes, because that's what I want to figure out today. That's really what I want to focus on. So at a base, because this is going to be a hard stream to follow, especially if you join in late, so we're going to start from the beginning. And I am talking about this because I kind of want to redo the whole thing because I don't like where it is. I need to think my way through it. So, step 1, you pick a class. You have 4 basic classes: Mage, Fighter, Rogue, Acolyte. And then eventually, once you get through the first tree, after a couple levels of putting points into their skill trees that we talked about a little bit ago, then you would essentially, after that, there would be another list of, you know, I guess, quote, tier 2 classes, and you could pick any of them. And then essentially, let's pop in here and talk about the different... Oh.
Are you tired of peeling potatoes?
What? So the way it currently is you got a boy. Oh, my thing is still set to
Payment for
pencil.
services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
This is important. It must be perfect. You got a boy. 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 So. You essentially have, starting class. I'll just label one of them so you understand. Super basic fighter. Then you go through the skill tree. And then once you're done with that, you have a full list of other classes you can pick. You know, ideally there would be like 10 to choose from. So then at the end of your like character building progression, you would have, okay, you have a fighter who has picked like Berserker and Sword and Shield Man and Swashbuckler, and then that's your like character build. So you are essentially, from this grouping of 10 different classes, you were able to pick the 3 of them and they all mesh together to finish your character. 10 special classes per class or total? Per class. So like the rogue would have their own subset of classes, and the mage has their own subset of classes. So you're, in a sense, multi-classing within your own class. So a lot of class archetypes come down to just being subclasses. So like if you like druids, a druid would be, it was currently planned to be underneath the acolyte, because acolytes are more of support healing, and then you would also get into a nature spell tree through what about paladin? Paladin was under acolyte. So this is the current system, and a very complicated problem that I feel I've come into is there's 2 things trying to go on here. You want to keep it you want to keep everything simple. Don't want I want to keep level scaling to a minimum. What I mean is, the default stats for a starting character is you have 4 hit points and 4 movement. It starts extremely low, and I don't want it... Okay, because writing this down on my teacher chalkboard actually takes too long. So like, okay, I want to do this comparison. Boom. D&D, Ster. So in D&D, this is your level. Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In D&D, the way it works is, most classes, on an average, you roll for hit points every level, and a hit point dice is, on average, like a D8. So you get, essentially, if you're doing max hit points, you get 8 hit points a level. So, you know, it's different per class, like a sorcerer would be 6 hit points, blah blah blah. But basically, you know, you start with 8 hit points. Second level, your health actually doubles, and it continues to, you know, grow. And after that, I would have to do math. And that's just not even possible after 24. There's no way it can be done. Thanks, chat. 25? Yeah, I think it's 25. People do max hit dice. Some people do. Arcadum usually does max hit dice for... Like, if you start at level 5, every level up to 5, he just says take max hit points. But basically, your level... Your hit points are... I would say, have a large growth. So by the time you hit, you know, max level, which no one really even plays at max level, which I would consider a huge design flaw of D&D in the first place, is that your game, like, falls apart getting that high, so why does it even exist? I don't know. But what I want to make sure that I keep is keeping health consistent and simple and not scaling to ridiculous levels, because the problem, like, right now you start with 4 hit points. Level 2, actually the character Ashley was testing last night went down in hit points as we played. So at like level 3 or 4, Ashley was at 2 hit points. It was spooky. Generally speaking, you'd stay at like 4 and you'd only gain some here and there if you really wanted to, because that means you don't, like, level scaling fucking sucks. Even in like Fallout and Skyrim and all that shit, like, and like I feel like level scaling never works, because especially in D&D, it just creates this problem where we'll say specifically for Pathfinder. So Pathfinder, when you're following the same level scaling, actually we could just do 5th edition. It's already written. So at 5th edition, once you hit level 5 in 5th edition, most of the fighter classes or the attacking classes get an additional attack. That's because your health is scaling so much that to fight things of your similar level, you need to be able to attack more times. So it starts off like level 1 down to 5 is 1 attack. At level 6-ish, well, at level 5, it's like, okay, health has scaled so much that the only way that we can keep your damage up with the hit points that other things are getting is by giving you an additional attack. So, especially, like, Pathfinder, it's even worse, but by the time you get to a high enough level, like if you are in 5th edition and your level, we'll say, I don't know, 15, you're going to be doing 3 attacks. The attacks themselves barely scale, but you just need to keep adding more attacks because the hit points keep rising. But that essentially, especially because it's like a tabletop game, that just means you're going to be rolling fucking 3 dice that you have to add math to every single time, find the result. Like, it's cumbersome for no reason. So I'm trying to keep the numbers low and it's simple. Yeah, teacher, I have a question. What's the question? Is your HP gain random or fixed? Well, we're going to talk about that, because that's one of the huge dilemmas that I've come across. I'm just trying to set the stage of what I'm trying to accomplish and why I'm on this thought process. Is an 5e's HP bloat worse than Pathfinder's because of bounded accuracy? I don't actually know the numbers on it, but I was just thinking Pathfinder is kind of worse because your base attack bonus scaling of when you get multiple attacks is more consistent. In 5th edition, you could make a character that essentially... Well, I guess it's the same thing as with casters in 5th edition. Every 5 levels, a caster's cantrip adds an extra damage dice. So, you know, level 1 to 5, you're dealing, what is it, like 1d12 with something like, Toll the Bell or Toll the Dead. And then once you hit level, I believe it's once you hit level 5, then it goes to 2d12. So you again, like, to have these huge spikes of just like, okay, now that you're level 5, we're doubling your damage. To keep up with the fact that for the last 5 levels, we've been more than doubling health. Because level 1 to 2 is double health. Then you need to continue that same health growth to 5, where they double your damage. And for a game where you, like, rolling that many times is stupid. There's no point. Scott here, Pathfinder is worse because it's too much math. Well, yeah, that's the other thing about Pathfinder, is that for every dice you roll, you also need to add plus strength, plus mod, plus obscure thing that I did from my class that gets that. And then, you know, whether or not I'm flanking... Fire. So if health doesn't scale and damage doesn't scale, how does the combat progress? We'll get there. Since Ashley said the combat is kind of like Into the Breach, where you know the enemy will do the next turn and position yourself to avoid it, do you think a mechanic where more intelligent, perceptive characters can do it in some better way? You, the player, are the intelligence behind your character. So you need to figure it out. Like, each combat I'm trying to make feel like a puzzle. And yeah, you don't know exactly what they'll do, like Into the Breach. Like, Into the Breach shows you, this is their attack path! You have, like, a general sense of, this creature can always do this. Do I have... It's not important. You know what they can do, yeah. I mean, it's fairly easy to assume what their characters will do. And then, like, there's a very limited amount of options. The numbers are very low. Everything makes sense. Like, it's not like, this creature will walk up to me and attack me, but could, like, in Pathfinder, an archer shooting you is literally, based on the dice roll, they could miss you, they could hit you for 1 damage, they could hit you for 8 damage, or they could hit you for 32 damage. Or that creature might use a special ability it has. And that's just like a level 1 archer situation. Because for some reason, bows do 3 times critical damage. And, you know, why the fuck not? So like a 5% chance your character dies. If an archer can shoot you. And that's like way too much variance. We talking Pathfinder? We're just talking general. We're kind of mixing between D&D and Pathfinder. Pathfinder is rough. Yeah, 32 damage for level 1 archer. Well, in Pathfinder, the way it works out is I think bows are bows 1d8 or 1d6? $32 is an over-exaggeration. It's not really.
Are you tired of peeling potatoes? Yeah!
So a level 1 Pathfinder, you only have 8 hit points. Like, on average. So an archer does 1d8 plus strength. Yeah, it's plus their strength. So it could be 1d8 plus more. So if they deal 8 damage, they could do anywhere from 1 to 8 damage to you. Or they could do 0 damage to you because they miss you. And if they land a critical hit, then you multiply that by 3. So if it actually is 8 plus strength and your strength is like 2, then yeah, they're gonna do 30 damage to you. And on average, if you have max HP on your class, assuming Constitution isn't in here, that can one-shot kill you up to like level 4. Range is dex. I thought it was still composite bows were strength-based. Well, some bows are strength-based, right? Doesn't really matter. Semantics. Does strength mod get multiplied on crit? Yeah, because it's just added to the damage. Some things aren't, but it's... We're gonna get it, like, into the next problem. Like, what is added to here, and is that multiplied, and when does what happen? Point is, it could be anywhere from 1 to 8 to, like, 20. That's... Like, as a player, how do you plan for, they have 3 archers, they can do between nothing on their turn or 20 damage. I have 20 health, what do I do? I don't know, I'll assume they'll miss. That's like all you have. You're playing random numbers and not, like, it's less strategy. I keep saying that every time I talk about it. It's less strategy and it's more roll the numbers. Because as much strategy as you have, your numbers can be rolled bad. There's too many dice! So generally the way my game is right now is that, like, all melee creatures are essentially doing, like, 1 damage. and then there's support characters, so you can tell how much damage something's going to do to you. You know the movement they can move, like potentially how bad of a situation you're in. And with how simplistic the rule set has been, it's been really nice to see, especially Alex last night, because he's never played D&D. And, I don't know, he's played a lot of board games, so I think he picked a lot of stuff up very quickly. But still, to see him spending, like, 5 to 10 minutes thinking through a turn of all the possible outcomes and what he needs to do is reinforcement that it's going in the right direction. That you can feel like you feel like you need to optimize your whole turn because you understand all the outcomes and there has to be a better way to finagle things. Trying to avoid just the walk up hit. Encouraging people to fudge rolls. Rolls suck. I don't know why anyone, like, I don't know. Anytime anyone's like, let's do a level 20 boss fight, and then you have to roll, like, 10 dice for your attack. Like, what? I don't know, just... Gygax was wrong. Part of this is due to Jeremy's style. Specifically, what is that style that you think is causing this? Any mechanics like high ground advantage or something similar? Kind of. I think it would be based on which class you'd picked. But yeah. So move all the RNG to something else besides them. Well, let me get into let me bring up map tools again and see if I can help explain the general combat a boy's going for. So this is actually the the aftermath of one of the test things we had yesterday. And the general idea is that your positioning is extremely important. You don't get a lot of movement. Your character can, you can go down a path where you can get more if you want, but you have a limited amount of movement, yes. Ronnie played Glairbin. So, like, there are a lot of on-tile effects, and in that way it's kind of like Divinity, where the things that are on tiles also are very important, so the positioning of people become important, reinforced by what's on the ground. There's a lot of, like, pushing and moving people, so a very basic example being... Oh no. That is my friend. He is standing in a fire tile. At the start of his turn, he will take damage. But I, as a wizard man, caster, shaman, boy, have a wand, and I can pull him out of it. Now my friend is safe, and didn't lose 1/4 of his HP. Also, through some testing we found it was a lot more fun if all of the player characters go first, and all go together, so you can kind of plan your shit out. We were doing random initiative at first, and it seemed... I don't know, it just didn't feel as good. After trying one time putting all the player characters first, it was like, oh, this clicks and makes a lot more sense. We can actually synergize our positioning and all the stuff we're trying to do. You need a buggy initiative like Divinity. It was pretty buggy yesterday. I gotta see if I can fix it. Because I made buttons on all the characters where's Glairbin? So if you press the end turn button, which you can't see, I'm pressing off screen, I guess. It would end your turn. It says that you ended your turn in the chat, and then the camera automatically moves to whoever the next turn is. However, found out that only moves the camera for the person who pressed it, and it wasn't working half the time. Probably more than half the time, so that sucked. But I like end turn buttons. The player can't go back and be like, wait, I did the... No, you ended your turn. Fuck you. But yeah, a lot of the skills are are brought down to the level of positioning in tiles, where what is on a tile is super important. Like one of the main healing abilities is Healing Wells, which is the first thing to move through this tile will get healed. And then if you have undead enemies that get hurt from healing, you know, and you have other options where you're like, you know, as a fighter, you can push people into shit. And then you have, you know, cool combos with things going all the way. This does seem very Into the Breachy, yeah. Because Into the Breach is a lot of like, I need to move that creature here so that he does this, and it's, yeah. I would definitely say it feels a lot like Into the Breach plus Divinity ground tile chaos. Can you cast a healing well under people? No. There are other spells, like if you just want to straight heal a teammate, there's a spell for that, but the healing tile ones heal more. We get back to the skill tree now. I was about to get there. We're getting there. So how to explain this current... Oh my god, my pen stopped. Do I have to run that batch file again, Ronnie? Huh. Yeah, I ran it again. Okay, that's... Here's... Okay. Here's a problem. So... Number one... Here, we're gonna do a slight red for the dilemma list. Problem number one. Oh my... My pressure sensitivity broke too. So I would have to restart Photoshop. We're just gonna ignore that. Starting class feels boring. Okay. So you start as a fighter, and I tried to put a lot of basic things into the fighter class. Of just like, you know, this is... You're just starting... It's a very generic name. You're a fighter or a rogue. It doesn't become specialized, so it's not... I don't feel that interesting. As an example, in here, so you'd go from rogue, and it's a lot of generic... Just kind of generic feeling shit. And then the other classes, it becomes more specialized, like Alchemist. Potions are cool. Arcane Trickster became pretty cool. So it feels like, in a way, you know how in D&D 5th edition, most of the classes don't gain their thing until 3rd level? You don't get your, like, class-specific thing until 3rd level. It felt like, why am I making people wait and slog through the starting part here that isn't quite so interesting. So maybe I could speed that up a bit, because I also felt as though it was taking too long to get through this tree. But then that also brings up another issue, where we were attempting to keep things, the scaling to a minimum. So we like that health is low. For some reason, I'm still trying to stick to that, because I like how that goes. Don't talk. Man, my hotkey for Spotify isn't working either. Everything's breaking. So you want to keep scaling to a minimum. So in a lot of these starting classes, I was putting, like, fighter has some of his skill point nodes that are +1 HP. Makes sense. You want +1 HP. You're a fighter. It makes sense for a fighter to be able to scale in health. He's got some other ones that, you know, make him super tanky. There's a whole tree where you gain a bunch of health, and at the end of it you gain like +2 hit points and lose some damage to give up for that bonus. Here's the problem. In a game where you have 4 hit points to start, gaining 1 hit point is a massive percentage jump. In order to give a player an option, on a skill tree like this, that is more enticing than going up like 20% in your hit point values, is impossible. You can't compete with it. When you start with 4 movement and positioning is super important, going from 4 movement to 5 movement is like, if you don't pick the what is it here? Rogue has +1 movement. If you don't pick that, you're wrong kind of situation. Which is akin to in Pathfinder and a general like skill tree design problem of feat taxes, skill taxes, where things feel like you have to take them, so your diversity isn't actually there. So you get all these choices, but it's also like a no-brainer. Like, I'm making an archer, I have to take point-blank shot into blah 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 in Pathfinder. So a huge problem with this is hit point scaling as a choice doesn't work. So that's one reason that I like have to change the way things are working. Because then also, like, I was just kind of going along making secondary classes, like, oh, this class is kind of tanky, we'll put 1 HP in there, and it's like, man, that's just... Or actually, no, I was putting it as, like, when you become this next tier, like, this class gains 2 hit points. It's just, it's so impossible to make it feel balanced correctly at all. And it's such, like, a powerful tool that I don't want HP and movement to be choices. Yeah. So, where's my notebook? One idea that I had started with originally, is this also is inspired a little bit by ye olde Ragnarok Online. The way Ragnarok does some of their class tree in the beginning is you start off as a fucking dummy novice, and then novice is the starting class for everybody's. Everybody has to play a novice, and then after that it branches into like swordsman, archer, all the basics. So my current thinking was, okay, fucking loser civvy. My current process was, okay, what if novice had like its own, I guess, semi-skill tree? It wouldn't have to be, it would be better if it's just more like feats lined out, like you can take this, or you can take this, like perks, we'll call them. Perks or quirks. So from the start of the game, you would decide in your novice class what your hit points and movement and that kind of stuff will be for, you know, carrying forward for the rest of the game. And I would want them to have big trade-offs to make it feel like your character defines itself and becomes more unique from the start. So like if you were taking something, it would, you know, take away something. Super novice though, fuck super novice. You could turn hit points and movement into temporary buffs with a duration of turns and cooldown. I've completely removed durations from nearly everything, because it was also easier to keep track of things when there were no durations, which would take a while to explain, so I don't want to get sidetracked on that. So the current thing I was thinking of before this stream is basically, inside these perks, what are you selecting that is actually basically what would reside within this novice class to make it work. And I would want things that come with ideally a negative or some sort of trade-off. So you would select a bunch of these to build your starting person. And I guess you'd also have a race choice somewhere. And I don't know if that's too clunky or too much to throw into the beginning. And also, if it makes your decision too permanent. Because, like, if you come out of this with, you know, like, well, here's my character. He has 3 hit points. And then for the rest of the game, you have 3 hit points. You might feel like you fucked yourself. There is an armor system, so like wearing equipment can give you armor, and there's spells that like, hey, give X amount of armor to my ally, which could compensate for this. but I'm not sure if it's like, hey, new player, make these decisions that will screw you over for the rest of eternity. I don't know that if it's wrong to think that they'd screw you over, though. So I wanted to make them more, like, roleplay based as well, like, with some flavor in them. Not just like, I have X number of points, I put them all into hit points, I am done. I have a very tanky character. I did get stuck on the skill trees with some abilities I couldn't actually use at the time. Yeah, for this I didn't want this to be a skill tree either, actually. I want this just to be options, and you can only take so many of them. That's why I'd advocate for letting you change abilities as you go on. Like how so? I mean, within it being a D&D-like game, you could have story hooks for changing things. How much stuff a PC can carry. I haven't exactly figured out an item system yet either, which slowed me down in a couple of classes, but I also want to keep that simple. So I was thinking of just having an inventory slot for... that's an armor. That's your armor. So you'd have an armor, and then you'd have X number of slots for... like health potions, because this is a whole nother dilemma that I hate health potions, and the idea that you could buy 100 health potions and become a healer because you have that many, kind of thing. Like, I don't know, consumable items are very complicated, and then you would you'd have like one slot for a trinket kind of situation where it's like add something extra special to your character. So the armor would add basic stats. The armor would also determine how many consumable slots you have. So if you choose an armor that's like, it's, you know, my traveling pack, and I got a big old backpack, and I'm the boy that does... You could have a bunch of shit. Also, with a system like that, I feel like you could add some classes that are just like, boom, it adds a trinket slot because you're like an artificer or some shit like that. That could help expand this, because keeping things as small as possible to start and then giving player options to expand them is one of the best ways to add player choice. So if you really want more consumables, then there will be ways to do it. No ordinary person can stomach a dozen healing potions. Tie potions to a system like hit dies. I don't want to do that either. I don't want to... I like the Slay the Spire design philosophy of, like, if something's broken the way it's written, that doesn't mean you need to make a complicated rule exception. Just let the player get what they want. Don't you put these extra rules to create a barrier for the thing that they want it to do. So keep the rules simple. As simple as possible, and if something is strong within it, that's not a cause to, like, make a new rule set to avoid that. If possible.
Payment for services rendered. Pleasure doing business.
What if you force them to acquire quirks by performing certain in-game actions, like a certain amount of running to gain movement ranges? No, fuck Skyrim. I run a lot, and I'm better at running now. That's also, you can't track something like that in this type of game. That's, like, impossible. At one point or another, I also wanted to... I think the very first thing I went with was... so you would have a class. basically the starting classes. I wasn't sure if there'd be a novice or not yet, so that was a big question mark Mario block. And essentially they'd be done in tiers. So tier 1, you'd have like fighter. And then it would open up some options for a tier 2, and then it would open up some options for a tier 3. But also, so like within a class you'd start fighter and then go here and then be like, well, okay, tier 3 is coming up now, I want this one, and you'd go down a path of skills. But I feel like there's no reason that would be better than just letting players pick from any of them at any time that they want. Because then you're doing this, you're specifically saying tier 3 classes are better than tier 2 classes. And then if like a tier 2 is an alchemist and you're like, I really like potions, I want to keep doing potion stuff. Okay, tier 3 doesn't have an alchemist, and that means my alchemist is weaker than whatever I pick it. I don't like it. I don't know, just one of the first things I was considering. I believe that your Quirks perk system at a novice level should actually incorporate both, with some offering attribute changes and some adding flavor with obvious advantages and downsides. Basically. How about a system without classes and just a bunch of feats? Again, keeping it simple also means keeping it simple for players. You don't want a player to enter a system and, like Pathfinder does this to you. It's amazing and cool how many options Pathfinder gives you, but go look at the Pathfinder feat tree, like the feat list, and then make a decision. It's not one player can have all that power. Yeah, look at Path of Exile. Like, people, you can understand that, you can get into it, but I mean, getting someone to play some random shit I made half on a stream is already hard enough. Like, for D&D in general, in that style of game, you want a new player to not have hurdles. It's already hard enough to have a DM and players and have them all show up. Adding anything else that overcomplicates it is like, you went too far. Just, so the challenge is having profound depth in the system without just creating depth from 1,000 options, because the 1,000 option comes down to a problem anyway, where once you're an educated player, Pathfinder has like literally 1,000 feats to choose from, but once you know what you're doing, I'm gonna make an archer. I take this feat, I take this feat, I take this feat. There's basically only 3 feats. Like, an archer has a, you know, we go back to the feat tax where they fucking need this. So 1,000 options, but people are gonna find the best ones, and then they're gonna pick those best ones. If they can take anything they want, they're gonna take the best one. So it doesn't help. It's kind of weird how, like, more options actually make things feel less diverse a lot of the time. Especially if you're a new player, and you're like, I want to make an archer. Can you help me build an archer? I want to make a really... Well, you take this feat, you take... And then the player's gonna listen, and it kind of perpetuates itself. Is that grammar? Is that word used that way? Maybe tiers of classes will also just have better versions of lower tiers. Well then, you're doubling the work for yourself. You have to make a class 2 times. You know? And it's still less options, because then if you go that route, and you say, okay, tier 1, alchemist. Tier 3, better alchemist. Okay, this player wants to play a potion user. He's going to do this every single time. It's the best way to do it. It's the only way to do it. What about skills for outside of combat? I haven't put too much thought into outside of combat yet. In a sense, the game really leans on combat being important. Because of how the combat works, it kind of feels like a puzzle, so you can essentially even do like classic D&D puzzles within the combat system. But also, to simplify on that, I just wanted it to be so let's say we're going with this system. This one's fighter, rogue, archer. If you put let's do rogue. Rogue is the best one, because in D&D basically what happens is, I'm a rogue. I'm good at sleight of hand. Every rogue is good at these particular things because they're dex attributes and all rogues are good at them. So if you put 20 points into the rogue tree, whichever way you go down it, I was going to take that, do 1/2, and if you need to make a skill check like sleight of hand, then it's just d20 plus 10. Done. Instead of like micromanaging skill points that really don't matter, because they really do end up exactly the same for 99% of characters. It's not to say that within these classes you couldn't have things to change up that formula and add things to it and vary it, but your fighter's good at climbing, right? It doesn't matter what build you do in one of these systems. Your fighter's good at climbing. Your rogue wants to be able to persuade people. You know, it's just how it is and how the attributes line up. Would you level down both trees? So that's another thing that I've been struggling with, because I have to formulate the base character class progression first. Originally I was like, dude, of course multi-class. Like, why not? So essentially you would have, we'll go with this one. So, hold on, I'm like zoomed away in, this doesn't really help. So you'd start on a fighter, and then a fighter would have, you know, its bajillion different classes you could choose from after you're a fighter. So my first thought was, okay, we'll say arbitrary number, a fighter does 6 levels. After 6 levels, you get to choose a new class in fighter. Well, instead of that, you could take rogue. So you could jump across and say, you know what, I want to be a fighter and a rogue. And that worked better in the tiered system, because in that situation you could say, okay, I start fighter, I go to this class, okay, next level, it actually makes more sense to go into rogue, and then it would still be based on your tier. So as a rogue you'd have to start at tier 1 and then go down. So you couldn't just say, I jumped to tier 3, the best rogue thing here. But, I don't know. Something doesn't feel right about that. Number one being, we've already discussed, I don't like a tiered system. And if you're doing multi-classing, I feel like you need a tiered system. Because then there's nothing to stop you from saying, okay, I'm a fighter, take best fighter class. Okay, rogue, and also, we're back again to the problem of the fighter class feeling generic and boring. So you'd go, okay, fighter dat. Okay, and I have to play this fucking boring rogue, and then before I can get to... So I just wanted to keep it... Class identity is also great. Like, not being able to do everything is fine. How often do people actually multi-class, like, 4 classes in D&D Pathfinder? Like, people do it in Pathfinder because a 1-level dip in certain classes is just broken. 5th edition doesn't happen as much. It's usually, like, 1 or 2 things. But I feel like saying you're a fighter, and then you have, like, a bajillion class options in here is more than enough multi-classing to make up for the fact that you can't also be one of these. So at least, like, all of this is special to you. I like playing niche classes too, but I don't think that multi-classing is necessary to achieve that. multi-subclassing. Yeah, because the goal is always that underneath the fighter, you're going to be selecting, you know, multiple things. So you could be wildly varied in what you actually take within the fighter tree. And within fighter, you could have classes that are rogue-like. Rogue-like, get it? Haha. So you could have like a more thievery-focused, or whatever you want to call it, kind of fighter rogue. So you wouldn't have to, you know, grab from them. Ha, good one, thanks, man. Subclassing, replacing multi... Blah, blah, blah. Can't break... Yeah, it also is much better for balancing. Because again, when you... It's kind of back to the 1000 options dilemma of Pathfinder, where if you allow players to have every single option, no matter what class they are at any time, it becomes more of a checkbox of what you can get that is determined by you to be the best. And it feels more linear, despite the fact that there are more options. Class identity, man. If you're in a party with other people and you're the only fighter, like, all of this is special to you. No one else can fucking touch it, so you're special. A good number of player types want to choose the mechanical, optimal perk regardless of flavor. Well, they'll still be able to do that. That doesn't prevent that player from getting their jollies from making the most OP thing. It's just that their playground for choosing the most OP thing is defined. And then they still get to do that. Like in the Breach, each mech has a specific function. Yeah. So remind us again, what is the core problem with your existing leveling system you want to solve? Yeah, I need to go back to that because I'm feeling pretty good about this. So the main problem I need to solve is if there is a starter class that everyone starts in, or like a starter set of choices, whatever it ends up being, to have these perks or quirks actually be varied and impactful and flavorful. Not just HP and movement, not just base stats. Something a little bit extra. And finding a way to do that. Arcanum always talks about, I forgot what the system is. Is it the Warhammer tabletop that has like you pick something and there's a downside, or was that the vampire one? I don't remember. Dark Heresy, yeah, that one. Where you your character has a flaw. So I would want to build flaws into the early stage, so it's not just stat building. Also, I'm way down for extremes being possible for the people who want to try outlandish things, where if you're like, if you take a couple of these feats that legitimately bring your movement speed to 0, and you want to play the 0 movement character, but you feel like the trade-off was worth it, I don't want to stop someone from that. Outlandish things are great, yeah, you want to try something weird. And the combat system has enough pushing and moving and teleporting and like position-based abilities that I think you could figure out a way to have a 0 movement character on your team and have it work. An immovable fortress character? 0 HP mage, let's go. Yeah. You were getting close to 0. And then I don't know, just also, the other problem was HP scaling, as we were talking about earlier, that before, HP choices were too important. So bringing it into this perk system before you like really get into your classes defines your character forever, but I think that's a trade-off that needs to be made. Highest move speed possible. I wonder the guy you played in Fallout yesterday. Nice. Explain combat so we know how important HP is. Maybe. Just always make health cost a negative. I mean, I've tried to do that, but like, okay, here let's be for realsies. A lot of the time, gaining health, I mean, it can feel good, but also it's kind of boring. I don't want you to choose a class because it has health it has hit point nodes in it. If you want to talk about Path of Exile and all the options it gives you, how many of those options are you taking plus % HP? And how fun is that? The fun part in the Path of Exile skill tree is when you finally get to the thing, like the character defining change. But the meta of Path of Exile is like, you need this amount of health nodes or you're not viable. So why not just give people that health as they level? Like, that's what we're trying to avoid, is having a choice that's of something that is a necessity. That's why I want to give people their health and everything from the beginning. And then you also, that makes like enemy scaling and combat and everything down the road much easier. Because another, like, I was a little bit conflicted about this system and how I would want to tie it into my essentially, what do you call it? Setting. So in my setting of like D&D stuff that I had wanted to do, I wouldn't say that anyone is like a super mutant. Like, no one is like a superhero. You're people. So I like the idea of not scaling HP because you also, like, you're just a fucking dude. This is the dude you are. You don't hit level 20 and then have a multiple of 20 times the health you started with as a normal person. Like, you still don't want to be stabbed by a sword. You're still a dude. Maybe a wound system. Well, I also think resurrecting people is... Okay, that is actually something that is important here, because in D&D you're worried about, you know, your character dies, he's dead, kind of thing. I wanted to make everything more gamified so that it is like a standalone puzzle of combat. So if you're in combat and you drop to negative hit points, the only way that your character dies is if people have to retreat from that combat. Like if your team loses the fight. It's kind of more like the Pillars of Eternity style, where like a teammate goes down, at the end of the fight they get up. And also where you have situations like, let's say this is your team buddy. He takes 67 damage, which is 60 in the negative here. You as a player would have the ability, like if there's a healing well, you pull your dead ally onto the healing well, and then he would heal for 2 hit points and get up. So within a combat, it isn't like, I need to cast Revive, I'm bringing you back from the dead. It's straight up still based on the tile system of positioning and moving things around, in a sense. Not from negative 60, yeah, probably not. How do you pull him onto it without using it up? What do you mean, Ronnie? Can you pull sideways? I don't get what you mean. Final Fantasy Tactics had special maps where all character decks were permanent. Yeah, also, like, if I say anything, imagine there will be an exception to the rule. Again, I really like Slay the Spire design, where there is a clear design, like, this is how it works, and there's always one card that says, no, it doesn't work that way here. but it's still like, it's just this one thing where you could have enemies that like, hey, I'm the boss, I legitimately fucking kill you. Or, you know, within this dungeon the stakes are higher, and then you could tie that to story elements or something. I don't get your question, Ronnie. If someone walks over healing well, even if they're full health, I was having it so it was getting used up because it says first creature to pass through stand on this tile. So I was just having them kind of, they're done. You fucked up. Shouldn't have put it there. So I don't... Alright, demonstrate pulling onto a healing well. Okay, your player character is the Lich, Ronnie. This is your ally who's dead. Wands have the ability to pull, so you would just cast the wand on your boy and pull them onto the well. Because he went on the tile, he heals. You're pulling with a wand, not your... Yeah, you're pulling with abilities. You're like anything. Like, Ronnie and Ashley know this, but these squares were whirlwinds, which at the start of your turn, if you start in a whirlwind, it pushes you in a random direction. So, like, if you have a corpse in a whirlwind, and at the start of your turn, up, you get pushed up, you know, even that would revive you. Yeah. So, while HP is low, I think to go back, and why we were talking about this in the first place, is that even though your hit point amount can be very low, and you can feel very fragile, it is much easier to revive somebody, and death isn't permanent, so it's not like, fuck, I lost the literal 2 hit points I had. It's over! He meant if you were... Oh, yeah, Ronnie had a brain fart, because you thought you were pulling someone with their hands. Yeah, no. I think I would have to define exactly what heals revive people, though, because there's certain heals, like the healing aura one, that would be... I don't know, maybe a little bit too easy to revive people in a fight. So I kind of want to make it, like, specifically only the heal tiles can do it. Do you prefer resistances or hit chances, by the way? If I had to pick one or the other, I would take resistances. I think hit chances are really boring in a game where you only have one character and you only have one action per turn. My major complaint lately had been, we talked about on other streams, of like D&D is, you know, I'm a, it has to be in black, it has to. I'm a wizard! It's my turn. I'm so happy I made this character. I get one action this turn. My action has a 50% chance to do nothing to this enemy. Oh, my spell failed. I guess it's your turn now. And if you have like a 50% chance for your spells to fail, and a combat lasts for 5 turns, it's actually not that unlikely that a wizard could go through an entire combat not doing a single thing. Or it's far more common than it should be. So there's no like spell save DCs in this. It's that you cast a spell, you did it. Like, there needs to be an understanding of what exactly will happen if you do something. Chance for 3 times 50% misses is 12.5. Yeah, I thought it was somewhere around like 10. Even like a 10%-ish chance for your character, like, it doesn't even matter what level you are, especially in 5th edition, because you can't have intelligence over a certain point. I think the highest spell save DC you're realistically looking at is it 16 or 18? I think it was 16 in 5th edition.
This is a pretty song, Novice.
I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's a very high chance for nothing to happen, and you only get one action. So 50% chance for nothing to happen when you do your turn is... it's not very engaging. Especially all that goes into it. That's like the main thing that bugs me. Is, okay, Wizard Boy. I'm sorry to kind of beat a dead horse on this, but Wizard Boy has gone through, you know, several levels. He's got first level, second level, third level spells. He's gone through the effort to select these spells. He can only have a certain number of them prepared, especially if it's Pathfinder and you're a wizard, then you're like, man, I have, I don't know, Hold Person, which I think is a second level, fuck me, and I have Dingus. Doesn't matter. It's my turn. Okay, I use my third level spell slot, use... like, you're using resources to have usually not even a very favorable chance to do something, and then it doesn't even happen. You're like, okay, well, I'm out of third level spells. I can't not do something. You're being fucking blue-balled. You spend your whole turn to remove your option from being able to do anything. And you did nothing. Partial success versus hit or miss. Yeah, in this, it's just you hit. So I'm just whining. That's why they added cantrips. Their cantrips are shitty designed too. Toll the Dead. You have to target a hurt enemy. And then it's a 50% chance to do nothing. Still. Like, it's still the same problem. And then we talked about cantrip scaling earlier with, like, how it forces you to roll more dice the higher level you are. But it still is... Not a fan. Fucking dingus. Dead. But luck enables replayability and procedural storytelling. I'm not saying remove luck. I'm saying 50% chance for your character to not do anything every turn when you only have one turn and you have to wait through 10 initiatives because you're only controlling one character is boring. You know, if you have 4... You know, what's the super math on this? Where if you have 4 player characters, and we were talking there's a 12.5% chance that they could go 3 turns and miss everything, but you have 4 players all doing it, what are the chances during, you know, a combat that one player isn't happy? Because throughout a campaign, you're gonna have multiple combats. Like, if you've seen D&D or played D&D, there's always the one guy that's like, I always roll ones, I never had sucks. 100% of the time, exactly. Like, it's... There shouldn't be any chance that you don't get to play the game. Especially when you have to wait fucking 10 minutes for your turn to come around. And it's not any different for, like, fighters. Because they're also targeting, armor class. But it's a little bit more in a fighter's favor because they have strength stack. Like, their percent chance to hit is better than a percent chance for a spell to have an effect. Addressing the action economy instead of the dice rolling could be a more interesting way to tackle the problem. I mean, then you still have, like, okay, Pathfinder 2nd edition gives you 3 actions. I think it was really smart what they did with that. I haven't looked too much in the system since then. But 3 actions per turn that you can use on anything is a really smart direction to take a system. But it doesn't solve all the problems, because then you still have... You're still using your resource to cast a spell, and you still have a % chance that with your action you did nothing. Anyway, we're like super sidetracked. I'm just a big whiny boy. I'm thinking. So I'm at the point where I just want to like prototype and think, going back to said quirks, a couple example options that would be interesting enough to choose that kind of break beyond the mold of what I expect they're going to end up being. So what's the action economy here? Just your movement and your action. You can do both, and there's a bonus action that some things make use of. So like for example, it's very easy to say that one would be, like at a base value of what I'm expecting a lot of them to feel like is +1 HP, -1 move. Pick me. That's like a super obvious, I want to be more tanky and I don't care if I give up speed. Because that is really boring, but that's like the very base value choice. So starting from there. Resistance to certain types. That's a... Cathandu, how is Streamer Boy? I'm alright. I don't know, I woke up really late and my hand hurt a lot. Weird day. I also don't want to make them too specific and too plentifully specific. Where I don't like in Pathfinder how a character can have just super obscure bonuses that it is actually, even as a player character, annoying to apply your bonuses. To the point where I just don't fucking care and I don't even use them. Like, Druid or something gets 1/2 my level plus on my ability to use diplomacy with animals. Though things get much more obscure than that. We're like, man, I have to fucking, like, what level am I? Okay, half that, add that to, like, I just... I don't like those. At all. Hey, is there stealth? How does it work? Currently, Rogue has a stealth, and it's just if you aren't being observed, you use stealth, and then you're invisible. No one will see you until you come out of stealth, and then Rogue has a lot of, like, if you are stealth, this move does this bonus. So coming out of stealth gives you a big bonus. But I don't want every character rolling a perception roll to see if, like... That's a big part of what we were talking about, where we want you to be able to construct a plan and not have a huge what if every time you do it. Like, I'm gonna stealth here and my plan is to go do this. What if they see me? What if their perception roll is a natural 20 and my, like, stealth was bad? Rolling stealth in Pathfinder weirds me out too, where, like, I don't understand when you're allowed to re-roll things. So a lot of times it's like, you'll try and pick a lock and you roll a 2. I was like, ah, shit. Hey, DM, can I roll again? Okay. Ah, fuck. Hey, DM, can I roll again? Okay. So if you stealth and you roll a 5 and you're like, that's not a very good roll. Hey, DM, can I re-stealth? I don't know what the exact ruling on that is. I imagine that's like per DM and per situation. A lot of times, I feel like a DM can ask for a roll that doesn't even fucking matter. I made a joke about it yesterday, where someone will ask you, like, hey, roll a climb check. Ah, shit, I rolled a 2. Oh, that's fine. This is easy to climb. You can climb it with that. That's why'd you make me fucking roll? If I'm climbing this with a 2, what was the point of rolling? Fuck you. It's just like filler. Arcadum does it a lot, actually, that I find very confusing. Especially when he does new player games, the one that specifically weirds me out is that he asks players to make religion checks to find out who a god is, and then he'll give them the wiki page for that god, and it's like, I actually don't understand. So that information on who the god is publicly available to everybody who plays in your world. Would you not give them the publicly available information if their role was bad? Don't you want them to know who the god is? Yeah, but your character... But that's the thing, is that I think in a lot of those situations, even if someone rolls bad, he'll be like, you know what? I want you to know my lore, here it is anyway. I just made you roll for fun. It's kind of like in his universe, not knowing who the 7 is, it's like fucking impossible if you live above ground. So like, you see this insignia, what is it? Roll a religion check. I don't know, those specifically feel like such a basic thing to me that it's weird that they exist. I understand how that is character knowledge. But I don't know if you've been catching on. I don't like rolls very much. Random clapping. It was the clapping. These are like live jazzes. I don't like. Who knows? Maybe the guy on stage pulled it out and just started wanking and they clap. Making people roll can make them feel like they deserve the information they're getting. Yeah. Well, there's also here's the constant dilemma. Let me break this one on you fellows. So a character, you're the DM, a player is in character trying to persuade a person of something. So naturally it's a role-playing game. They role-play their persuasion. They come up with an argument. How much do you weigh how valid their argument actually was versus rolling a persuasion check? You know? Roll 100%. Because either of the far sides of those arguments cause problems. Because if you admit that the argument is more important than the roll, then you don't need the skill checks. And if you argue that the skill check is more important than the argument, then you shouldn't be role-playing. And if you meet somewhere in the middle, it still undermines good roleplay, because you want your world to make sense, I hope, maybe. Depends on the type of game you're running. That, I don't know, it's a very difficult in-between. I very, very much lean on the side of that the player's intuition, their role-playing, their argument is infinitely more important to me than any skill check will ever be. But I've also played with people that are much shyer and don't want to talk as much, or aren't actually that person. You know, they themselves are not a persuasive person, but they want it to play that type of character, and then you need to lean on the skill check for them. So that's like, there's no good answer to that question. That's a fucking philosophy question. Yeah, but then you play with blank and they don't actually make an argument. Yeah, I don't personally like that either. I mean, to me it feels like it's part of the game. But also it's a role-playing game, and playing someone that isn't who you are is ideal to a lot of men's. Supposed to have fun. Rules are just help and make sense of stuff. Yeah, I'm also way on the side of, if you don't know a rule, make it up as quickly as you can to make sure the pace of things stays on. You stay on pace and you don't interrupt for like searching for a rule, because it really doesn't matter. How else am I supposed to get a babe? I can't talk for myself. I don't know. I forgot why I went down that tangent. I actually I like had a further point and I completely forgot where I was going. Making computational thinking flowcharts. Nice. That'll solve it. Well, that also brings up another problem. I don't know if that's a problem though, actually. Because then you can still build a character for persuasion and then roll a 1. That's kind of like the essence of D&D though, like goofy shit happens and trying to explain it with logic ruins it. I'm the hero of the story, the fighter. I need to climb this rock wall. Rolled a 1, falls on head. Doi! Just kind of part of it. Will any of this be on the test? Yes. We need to get back to what we were talking about, of what is more interesting than this. And also, actually, that's why we went on that huge tangent and diverted of not wanting things to be too specific that they are annoying for a player to remember that they have them. Where if you're like, you gain +1 HP, but if you're in a situation where you're talking to 3 bald guys about car insurance, wagon insurance, or dragons, then you gain a bonus to your persuasion check. I have to remember for the rest of this campaign that I have this ability that only works when I'm talking to 3 bald guys? Plus I have 20 other abilities like this? What the fuck? If you roll a dice with a small chance to fail and vice versa, it's... I don't understand. You're basically describing what the system is, as far as I understand. That's what it is. You roll a d20 for persuasion. Also, what percentage of people would you say in a game like Fallout Skyrim, if they're playing a character, especially like a persuasion charismatic character, if they fail a persuasion check, what percentage of people do you think save scum and reload? I would say over like 70%, like the majority of people. So by that logic, do you want someone to build a charisma character? I can't say the word. Do you want someone to build a charisma character, put in, like, focus on that as hard as they can, and then get to a situation where they roll a persuasion check and roll a 1 and fail in a D&D game, and then they just have to be like, oh well, okay. And then the fighter rolls in with a beer in his hand and rolls and gets a 20. He's like, I'm better than you, fuck you. So I don't want that situation to happen. I want you to have control over, like, not percent chances, like definable decisions that lead to something. You accidentally said something racist. What is your opinion on stuff like you can swim, you can jump high, you can hold your ground when hit? See, the problem in the system actually is, like, for this, is if you give any, like, I had gone through this before on considering what race bonuses would be. So I was thinking about races, going from the races that I was using in my setting. What did Squid Boy have? Ignore the negative effects of water tiles because you're a Squid Boy. So like your entire character forever, water doesn't matter. Stuff like, I think Bug had, on your turn you ignore 1 tile of darkness, which is nice. But the system is so simple and so boiled down to small numbers that you can't give small advantages. So saying you can hold your ground on your turn is actually fucking massively overpowered because of how much of the system is built on being able to push people around and change positioning. If you just say, hey, you can be pushed 1 less tile, that is actually, like, profound how powerful that will be forever. Like, there will never be a point where that stops being exceptionally useful. So the difficulty in that situation is giving something that feels more meaningful than +1 HP, I lose a move, like a trade-off here, that isn't like massive, you know? Yeah. It's hard to describe too, without having quite played it. Can make those 1-use abilities per fight. That's kind of me being caught in a situation of I can't have it all, where I want to be very limited on the amount of 1-use abilities you have so that you don't have to keep track of them. But that is one of the best ways to balance it. Like, we had a Talix play the test session for last night. He never played D&D before, hadn't played this before, and one bit of his feedback was that he felt his abilities that were usable once per combat should just be usable whenever he wants, because he felt it was dumb to be limited in that way. But if it's not limited, it's either, like, checkbox, you are super powerful, or you're not, kind of thing. And once you get to a certain level where you're like, I have a class in Rogue, I have Alchemist, I have Hunter, I have the Stalker, and they all have once per combat use abilities being a consistent theme. You know, I got 3 here, there's 2 here. This class had a lot, I got 4 from that one. Rogue itself has 2. So like once per combat, I don't want someone to end up with a list that big of things they can do. In a sense, it's like, that's not bad, but it's not good. So before I say, you know what, like, that's the design direction we're going, I want to see if there's something better than that, because there has to be something better than that. We've been having this problem in my game. Yeah, like, especially when it's a game that's played like once a week in a group of friends. The amount of people that I've seen that have forgotten that they have a spell, that they have a potion, that they have some ability they could be using, that Shore4 had all of the fly potions, that Shore4 had the map to the secret location where we could enter the base, that Shore4 had all of the haste and fireball potions. Like, the amount of times I've seen things like that, the average player is going to remember the 1 or 2 of these things that they actually care about. the rest of them are gonna be like, oh wait, I have the thing, which is in a weird sense is like a skill ceiling in a way. It's hard to quantify this as a skill ceiling, but in D&D, remembering things is the skill ceiling. What all of your options are is like, if you have a good memory, you're fucking great at D&D. So that's part of it, but expecting someone to remember something when they only play once a week is also, if it can be avoided, I would like to avoid it. I always feel so good when I remember the thing. It does feel really good. So it has gives and takes of this system being good and bad. Come on, Jazz Boy, calm down a little bit. Calm down a little bit. Table of good stats and bad stats, and for every good one you want, you have to pick a bad one yourself. That's actually pretty interesting. I do immediately worry that certain bad choices would be more forgiving than others. An example that immediately comes to mind is the Oracle in Pathfinder, which is a class where you have to choose a curse. And I would say from my experience and reading about Pathfinder, 2 of the Oracle choices are chosen, and the rest of them are entirely ignored because the curse options are more forgiving on those choices. I feel like curses should be one of the few random things. I personally really like random starting stats for what could fuck you over. So for D&D, when I was building this for D&D, I basically have, maybe I could bring that up too, and maybe it doesn't matter. The Ooze class in my world is like, they're basically seen as sickly and diseased, and they fucking, Ooze people suck. So upon deciding that, like, you know what, DM, I want to play an Ooze, you would have to roll a d10, and each option of the d10 was your, I forget what it was called exactly, but basically your disease. And then you would have to deal with this problem forever. But the thing that made up for it is that the Ooze abilities were actually, by comparison to the other races, much more powerful. But you could totally get screwed over, and some of the disease type stuff was really obnoxious to work around. So personally, I like that, and I think it is an easy way to add a nice design challenge for character building. Of like, okay, this character can't hold weapons. All right, so I'm clearly going to make a mage, and I have to find out how to work that. Like, so I suppose that would be another option I could consider, because I really like that. But then you have to weigh on, and a lot of this is just like, many ideas are good ideas, but trying to make sure it's the best idea. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to, your first idea is rarely your best idea. So I'm kind of just poking at the same thing from a lot of different angles and seeing which one I like the most at the end. So you could totally set up a table of like, if you make a character, you know, here's 20 flaws, you have to randomly have a flaw selected for you. But also that ruins characters for some people. Pathfinder Tieflings and Aasimars, mostly Tieflings, have a system where you can decide to roll a D100, and your D100 roll determines like physical characteristics of your character, and kind of the system like curses and boons situation. So there is a lot of very vain people that have an idea of a character in their mind. Not even vain, that puts a negative connotation on people like that have an idea of what they want their role-played characters to look like and play like. And okay, I roll on the Tiefling table, and I have a third arm, no eyes, and my legs are scaled like a snake. That's just this fucking monstrosity. I don't want to play it. It's not even a cohesive monstrosity. It's like, it's an artistic disaster of composition. Why are only my legs scaled? I look like I'm wearing pants. You want your character to be yours, not something you were given. Yeah. So I mean, it kind of insists there that, you know, a DM could let you choose which option you want. I had a character where I had rolled on it. I was pretty happy with how I got. That was a lizard boy character named Rakoth I played in an Arcadum game. He had a whistling belly button, which I was fucking stoked for. He had eye stalks, like a snail, like his eyes came out on his skin stalk flesh things, and I don't remember what the third one was. You hit all your deformities? I did. Oh, the other one was that I had like leopard print scales, kind of, so I had like a bestial bloodline type of thing. So like my scales had leopard prints or something like that. He hit all your deformities with a mask. Well, he just happened to be like a really weird character that was very big on whatchamacallit, disguises. But certainly hiding the eye stalks helped, because like being guys, me and Ashley mention this all the time. Do you know how important it is when you're designing a character for other people to use, or like designing it for a story? Your character has to be fuckable. It's very important. If other people aren't going to want to fuck the character, it was a huge mistake. Seriously, very important. So if your randomly generated character has all these physical deformities, your character's not fuckable. That's your problem. If you're meeting other NPCs that aren't fuckable, I'm not as interested. Everyone always wanted to meet the hot elf god. Not everyone. One particular player. Dwarves unfuckable. Is fuckable a base stat in this game? It is. Also, kissable lips is a very important trait that basically, meta, you have to pick kissable lips or you're a bad character. So, back to what we were talking about on like a quote, I guess, deformities random character perk generation thing. They can't be physical traits. You can't decide how someone's character looks. It ruins the game for people. I think the best things you can give a player are things that inspire them to play a certain way. Where if you get the perk like your character ignores all darkness. Dude, I want to play a vampire! And fuck that vampire! Serena is so hot. But then we're back to the problem of like, that's super, super powerful. But again, making player characters powerful is good. You want people to feel powerful. But then it's just a dilemma of how many of these things can you give someone before, like, your entire party is immune to everything. Like, between 4 people, like, I'm immune to fire, I'm immune to this. So you just, like, have that guy do things related to that. And it kind of trivializes half the game. I wish Caius had kept his need to eat children. It was so in character. Man, me too. That would have been dope. But it's also different that way if it becomes your fault that you get one of these curses or character traits, and it's like, this is how I got it, not I started the game with eye stalks and I can't fuck my character, he's ugly. Balance between combat and non-combat, so quirks make you a bit stronger in battle, but less able to accomplish something else like bartering. I do like that. That usually the stronger, like, monstrous races. That's something that isn't explored too well in a lot of games, is... Like, 5th edition lets you just play a goblin, and if your DM lets you in cities, in, like, a traditional D&D setting, without consequence... In general RPG games, too, I think one of the best ones that did it was, Dragon Age Origins actually made the racial options feel different. But racial options... especially being a monstrous character, I feel like doesn't come up often enough. Singing on my song, I got jazz hands. It's also hard for me to think of social quirks because I've really only developed the combat side of things, so I can't even... When a system doesn't exist, you can't leverage it for making other systems, you know? There's multiple times where I was like, you know, a character class that uses the equipment system makes a lot of sense, like a blacksmith, artificer, alchemist. You need to know how many potions someone can hold if you're gonna make an alchemist. But then I don't even have an equipment system that could or could not be upgraded. So in this sense, too, like... Okay, a starting perk. In the same vein of this, plus 1 HP, minus 1 item slot? What is an item slot? Is that worth it? I mean, that's like a valuable trade, but I don't fully understand what it means. Being a Deathclaw in Fallout would be fun. Fallout has a lot of those mods where you can like play as a Deathclaw and stuff. Here's my question, do you actually want the system to be about things other than combat? Because D&D is a good example of a system that's very heavily about combat and kind of scattershots everything else. I think combat is more important, but combat without context isn't as good of a combat. So like if you just jump in, drop in, have a fight, it's much more powerful if you have a contextual purpose for that fight, and you know things are actually on the line. So I don't want it to be devoid of social interaction or story. Because it is, I mean, meant to be a D&D-like. Yeah. That's why also I favor, when we're talking about a player's persuasion, their actual argument having more weight, I would give more value to that, because if you don't value someone's argument in a persuasion situation, then you need to have rules that supplement not having a good argument. And then you're creating a whole bunch of social rules, and I think that generally that is bloat in a game. Like, you're the person playing, you're role-playing, you dictate what your character does and says. If you can't persuade this person, then like that's on you. I understand like a slight bonus from rules to an extent, but again, then you're making like a whole social system, and the less rules the better. You want to stick with map tools for the time being, or is it getting in the way In the long run, I would love to move off of map tools, but I don't know how feasible that is. This map tool, like, it's a very simple thing that's trying to be accomplished for the system, like when you look at it at face value, but then for like an actual client standalone that runs the shit, you have to consider, like, you have to have people able to connect to each other, chat, like even just the basic things you might take for granted become added on top of a to-do list. So for what it is at the moment, Map Tools works. Also, besides Ronnie's point, a good argument is subjective, and DMs and players have different opinions on that. Roles are objective. True. Suppose having social rules also, because if you're making a system and you expect other people to DM it, having a social system takes weight off of the DM's shoulders, where they can say, you know, they can point to a rule and be like, okay, this is how this is supposed to be handled. I don't have to be a judge and arbiter here. Or maybe, like, because you also are going to have different skill level of DMs playing something like that. Fane gets the sex scene in the game. He does. A specifically bony sex scene. I'm still kept awake at night by that. Ew. Now I know what you're thinking of. Because I feel like if you're DMing good and you understand the character's motivations that the player is RPing with, like, I'm trying to argue with this guard to get into that club for free. And you understand, okay, well, this guy, he's a guard, it's his job, but he doesn't like his job this much. Like, he's persuadable, and the right angle could get, like... Because if you don't have a reason why someone would budge in your perspective, like, if someone were to... Their argument is they want to bribe that guard, and he's like, well, I don't like my job enough, and this is money, here you go. Like, that argument works. But that argument only works if you have created and established that this NPC feels this way about this situation ahead of time. Because then otherwise you're winging it. You're just going like, I made... A lot of DM characters are like, I made this NPC, his name is John. John is here to tell you about the quest, and that he needs you to go to this cave. Hey John, nice to meet you. What's your last name? In the living world, I actually asked the DM what a character's last name was, and we paused for 5 minutes so we could figure it out. So, yeah. Then you need some social rules. Exposed! I don't remember who it was, so I don't know who's exposed. Also, they streamed it, so they were already exposed. I think I'm a little bit too... That's the word. Spread out on my ideals with this. Like, I know that I feel certain ways, but I'm also trying to make it so that everyone who feels any way would be able to understand, you know, what it is and what they're playing. And I feel probably not taking a hard objective line on how I feel like things should go is bad. Because D&D is already... It's already that. It's already... exists. And tries to be everything for everyone. Give everyone submachine guns and limos and the one true ring at the start. It'd be awful. Man, I like giving players what they want. Because that's what they want. Gave Tiffany a fucking tavern, and then we stopped playing. Got him. So yeah, that was kind of the point on the randomly rolling for I'm just gonna call them curses. They're not really curses. But then it's like, well, what if a player doesn't want the bad? Kind of need to just draw a line at some point and be like, well, that's how it is. In this system, there's a bajillion systems. Who cares if it curses the party? It's neat. Yeah, I don't know, because games like this are weird. They're like social games. And you can always bend the rules to how your party or your group likes things. And just say, you know what, guys, we're not even gonna... You know what? I don't like this. And then you play anyway. So I like that. I like that 5th edition is modular, and it's very easy to decide how you want to do things. And the more simple a system is, the more modular it is, just because it's simple. Once the system is made, people will stop questioning it. You've seen how people defend Blizzard. Well, yeah, I don't have years of weight behind me. You can't question Blizzard. But Ster, would you listen to Ster making the calls? The clout. Anyone ever play Shattered Galaxies? Clout always makes me think of that game. Because it was one of the, like, stat points. That's old. Oh, yes, oh my god, yes. I knew there'd be, like, one person that's like, holy, oh my god. How come no one else has made a game like that? Or have they? Basically, Shattered Galaxies was... You would have squads. You'd have, like, something like 6 squads of RTS units. So, like, think StarCraft, like, I have a squad full of Marines. And those Marines individually level, and you can equip them individually. Or you could say, I want 5 Marines and 1 tank. And then you would go into, like, a massive multiplayer fight for territory. And you'd enter one squad at a time and try and help everybody else for, like, a 20 versus 20 kind of thing. What if I want 6 tanks? Do it. Most of the time people would have, you know, 6 of the same unit or whatever the number is. Or you could have more than 6 if you leveled up your clout or whatever. Well, I don't remember too much of the specifics. Shattered Galaxy, just the one? Okay. Got up to 40v40. Yeah, it was really cool. You'd have, like, a really slow-moving artillery, like, launcher tanks that would set up. And there were points you had to capture, like control points. You'd set them up and try and blow shit up. You could have people defend you because you can't, like, you're just in charge of these dudes. And I don't know, it was a really cool big battle. It also had, you know, like a huge world map like PlanetSide has. The best comparison these days probably is the PlanetSide control map. And you'd have cities, and I think players actually became like the governors of the cities, and I don't know that whole system went. Or like commanders or something. Anyway, it was a cool game. Just randomly thought of it. And I don't think much like that has been made. Unfortunately, I also think that game... Actually, I don't know. It was so long ago that I want to say like it was pay to win. But I think also I was just poor. And I was like very young and had no money. And credit cards, I didn't even know what they were. And you could play up to a certain point for free and it was fine. And then after that, it was like this other planet of higher level, you have to have a subscription or something to go play. I think me and my brother just like had max level characters on the free planet. Anyway, That's how you could quantify the PC's reputation, call it clout. Well, I also have to consider, going back to the game, is because I think it's something I'm also torn on, but the best thing for a system is to also tie it to a setting. Where many times I've been like, man, 5th edition, who gives a shit about, like, or Pathfinder, what is their world called? I don't give a shit about Pathfinder's world, I don't give a shit about D&D's world. But their systems are based on these worlds, or even classes are named after, you know, lore-specific things, because it gives you a space to design in, and what needs to be made and what exists, and also an extra place for people to jump into. Or if you're like, oh, that lore is interesting, then you could start playing based on Galaron is the name of Pathfinder's world, I think. But yeah, maybe I should actually think of some systems that would need to exist for my setting and then see how that affects character creation and like kind of go backwards to get forwards. Because character clout and how famous they are is certainly an important thing. How many systems have you played? Just 5th edition and Pathfinder. I've heard quite a lot about 3.5. Haven't played it. I've heard a lot about other systems, but I haven't actually played them. Like Ronnie always talks about the vampire one, and Arcanum has explained Dark Heresy like 4 or 5 times to me. World of Darkness, yeah. I'm also, we were talking about it last night with Italics, but I'm very curious to try Gloomhaven. So maybe I'll have to do that when we go to PAX South and try and like get an actual game board and play with Arcanum or something. Really try other games before trying to design something. I mean, I've played other turn-based games. It's not... I'd say currently what I have is more inspired from non-tabletop games than tabletop games. I've played a lot of video games. What about table bottom games? Ew! I've been gone for like 2 hours. How do you think about martial caster balance? A couple of people have asked that because Wizard always becomes like, I can warp reality and teleport my whole party a mile, and like wizards are so much stronger than fighters, and I don't really see that as a problem, or not a problem I'll run into, because you just have to make fighters more interesting. Like, because it's ridiculous that the scaling of a level 1 wizard is, I can shoot magic missile, and a level 20 wizard is, I can create my own dimension. A level 1 fighter is, I can swing a sword. A level 20 fighter is, I can swing a sword a few more times. So like, they're just not, they're not even. And that's not something that has to happen. Wizards scale more ridiculously than fighters do for, like, no reason. In my setting, items are a bit more important than people, in a way. Which is why I really want to figure out an item system. So, like, sure, a wizard can create a dimension. The fighter has a sword that cuts a dimension. Like, there's no reason they can't both do ridiculous things. Materialism. Gonna give fighters anime power levels? I can hit someone 50 feet back or something? Heck yeah. I don't know about 50 feet because it's a little bit smaller scale, but hell yeah. Like, because the high end of the world is the whole corporation thing where the CEOs at the top are like super powerful, and generally they're powerful because they own things and they have money, so their items are ridiculous. The one CEO guy, Maximus, of the that kind of reigns over the arena. Where I got a picture of boy. I love his picture. Duh! Okay, now it's too creepy. You're looking straight at me. He has like... He's like a super buff dude that can punch holes in reality and has a lot of astral and like cosmic powers. So he punches his magic. That's just a JoJo character. I cast Fist. Yeah, so I don't... If there's a perception of wizards are always better than fighters, I find that to be a problem in just how interesting the characters were designed to be. Because really, fighters in a lot of tabletop games just get to swing more times. And there's no reason for that. You end up with a world where everything is crazy. Well, I mean, that's like super high-end stuff. Like, the CEOs in the world are basically what gods are in other settings. So his power level is like, he's a god. Yeah, he can punch dimensions. But it's not to say that on a high-end level fighter that you wouldn't have abilities that are equivalent to what a high-end wizard could do. Also, for my setting, one thing that I tried to keep consistent through D&D was that the human race is a level 1 character. By getting level 2, you are basically twice as good as everyone else. So the scale of leveling is... Even at a low level, you are an abnormality. So you being able to do crazy things doesn't mean that the world itself is crazy. I don't know how much more I have to talk about. I don't know. I didn't really solve my problem. I think this has helped me realize that I should design in a different direction before I circle back and try and fix this. Like actually figuring out the armor a little bit and seeing if I can make setting specific mechanics like fame or something like that. If that would help with... Because it's gonna matter to everyone. So it might as well be something that classes and quirks could then lean on. Cause yeah, when you don't know what item slots are available, you can't write an ability that depends on it. Your neighbor Marco? Fuck you, Marco. Move somewhere else. So each level a logarithmic scale? I don't know what that is. I'm not the most smart. A logarithm is the inverse function to exponentation. That means the logarithm of a given number x is the exponent to which another fixed number, the base b, must be raised to produce that number x. Oh, well then yeah. I don't know. What do players get rewarded for in the system? Originally I want level ups to be very quick, so that, like in D&D, if you level up during a session, unless you plan on the session being very long, it's generally... I don't know, people have a hard time leveling up mid-session and choosing things, especially Pathfinder when you have 1,000 feat choices. To come up with your next level mid-session slows everything down dramatically. So leveling up should be fairly fast, because all you have to do is basically say, I want that skill, and they're all in a line for you, so it's easy. But also because of the way the combat is, I want to incorporate things like, you know, in XCOM, a recent example, they drop those exosuit components on the map, and they're like, this is only here for 3 turns, make sure you collect it. It might be hard to because you're fighting, but like, I want bonus objectives within combat. Ashley was talking about how, like, treasure goblins that run away is nice, that kind of thing. So, aside from just having combat for the sake of combat, I want to add, like, bonus objectives into it that help progress characters. All weapons have a spell of sorts attached, by the way. Yeah, they do. I was actually, I might need to rethink how weapons work. So the way weapons currently are is that, like, you select fighter, you get a weapon. You get to choose which weapon. The weapon does a thing. So, like, a spear attacks a tile in front of you. Or the two-handed sword just does a shit ton of damage. But then, on a cooldown, they have abilities where the spear deals damage to both tiles in front of you. Or the two-handed sword becomes piercing damage, which ignores armor. So they have, like, an alternative, like, I can use this ability here. But if I change the way that classes are selected, then I might also... See, okay, because that kind of comes back to this, where if there was a novice class... I'm not on the right thing, but how do I deselect? I imagine your novice would have to decide that for a part, like, what weapons your character uses. Like, at this point, it'd be like, I know how to use a bow, and then forever your choices are, you already know how to use a bow. Because the way it is right now is like... Not too happy with the way it is now. Too long, didn't read. This is fighter. These are a lot of the fighter weapons, and then their special ability underneath. So fighter starts with picking one. Then they can get more later. A rogue starts with one, and then, like here, weapon mastery, you gain an additional one. So you'd start knowing a bow, then through your skill tree, you come down here. Okay, I learned how to use the daggers now. But if you don't want the starting class to be generic and boring, which is why another reason why this starting feels generic and boring, like, you're getting, for being a rogue, really basic, character-defining, essential things that almost in a way you should already have. So I don't really like how that is. I think that if there were a novice, like, starting position, then they would have to control what weapons your character can use. All that about progression is interesting, but you haven't said exactly what it is that players get, XP or levels or whatever, for. Is it surviving encounters, killing mobs? Depends on the encounter. So generally, because leveling is fast, if you complete a combat encounter, most of the time I would say it's reasonable to say you win, you get a level. But then also it depends on the campaign. I don't like gaining experience because it's another arbitrary thing to keep track of, where every player has to keep track of their experience bar, what each kill counts for. Like, it is so much additional math and work to understand that even when we play other tabletop, we just kind of do milestones where it's like, okay, you've hit a major story point, you gain a level. And if you mean why they would want to gain levels, is because everyone wants to gain levels. To be strong. The way Novice sounds, it seems like an extra step to character building. It's actually, in a way, attempting to solve the extra step, which I know sounds weird because it is an extra step. Because right now, Rogue, getting through this skill tree of basic essential things is taking a long time, and this feels like a really long, boring extra step before you can get down to the interesting characters. So the goal of Novice is to boil down your base stat lines into a series of decisions and basically make it like one level. So in a way, it's like, it's good to start basic because it's like a tutorial, and then once you get the hang of it, you can say, okay, fine, we're starting at level 3 from now on. But Novice will actually probably cut down on the amount of like boring time, hopefully, is one reason for it. It kind of jumps ahead and defines you rather than 6 levels of defining you in a basic class. You have leveling and skills in this game betrays some really base norms about what you want this game to be. How does it betray them? I mean, the fact that I don't want HP scaling doesn't mean that I don't want there to be progression. You're making something that exists in the same mechanical space as D&D. Do you want that? I do. That's a big part of the point, is that simplifying what D&D is to less rolling, more simplistic, quicker to get into, more decision making than rolling. Dungeon World has levels and a lack of HP scaling, and it's pretty good tabletop. I'll look into it. Dungeon World. Being rewarded for completing encounters, then odds are that the game revolves around set encounters. Well, it does. And then obscuring the complexity. I don't think that... I don't know. I also wonder, like, because, I don't know, how long have we been doing this? 2.5 hours? I also wonder how many people asking questions, like, just joined, you know? And how earlier explanations might have avoided the question. That makes sense. Yeah, see, I just got here, so I could totally make an ass of myself. Not making an ass, it's just... I'm under the assumption that everyone I'm talking to is, at this point in the stream, all had heard everything, which is... you can't do that as a streamer. So it's just me kind of taking a step back of, like... you might have missed... I mean, it is more reasonable to expect that not everyone saw everything. I think we're double backing at this point with questions like, how do you plan on keeping rolling involved, if at all? Generally, anywhere I can remove rolling, I will remove it. damage is flat numbers. There's no armor class, there's no spell save. There is some semblance of skill checks, but I might be able to find a better solution to that because there's a lot of problems with skill checks too, as we talked about with persuasion and building your character to do something and then rolling a 1 and failing at it. Opinion on gunslingers. What about them? The gunslingers from Twin Towers? He's a cool guy. The Two Towers? Stephen King? Some... Dark Tower. That's it. If you remove RNG... I'm not removing RNG. I need to add a little bit more of it. But, it is certainly aimed to be a controllable RNG. If we pop over to our confusing map... So a lot of things, most effects that happen on a tile trigger at the start of a person's turn. Hey, heal up. So these blue squares are, where is... This shaman casts a spell that is a whirlwind, which just for quickness, throwing down these blue tiles, everything in here is the whirlwind. So, if you start your turn in here, for a random example of randomness, you would choose a random facing direction, which we have a confused button, which decides that he faces right, and then you would be pushed 2 to the right. So the randomness in this spell exists, and if you start in your turn here, you know, you can be pushed in any of these directions, and depending on the direction could mean a lot for your decision making. Like if you're over here, then being pushed into this wall means you take damage. Being pushed here means nothing, you know, being pushed, you know, so you could say, on my turn, I have a really high chance of dying because of this push. Can I have a teammate teleport me out of this? And then your teammate will be like, yeah, fuck, I don't want you to die there, and they'll teleport you out of the shitty situation. So it creates the random element, but you can also plan to avoid it. But if you're in here and you're like, I'm in the middle, I'm not going to get pushed into anyone or anything, it really won't affect me. Cool. So any randomness that occurs is limited enough that it can't completely decide. This feels like the conversation that I've been hearing a lot recently of Artifact, and how Artifact did RNG super wrong, where you have a ability like Cheating Death, 50% chance for a card to not die is, you know, a coin flip of good thing happens or bad thing happens. Either way, someone playing Artifact is upset at the result, because you always want to get the better result, and if it doesn't happen for you, that sucks. And it's just like the same thing with D&D, where I'm going to cast a spell on this enemy. I have approximately, because of their spell save, about a 50% chance to do nothing this turn. You're going to be upset if you do nothing. There's no way around potentially doing nothing. So any sort of RNG needs to be, in my opinion, in pretty much every game, something that you can plan around and doesn't feel like shit, like doesn't waste your time kind of way. So similarly with, in a similar fashion of the random direction, there's the confused status, where like, I think in D&D, confused is like, you have a chance to do nothing, you have a chance to attack the nearest person, which actually is one of the better forms of RNG in D&D, where it's not, I don't know, it actually has interesting options. It has multiple results. I like that. You can't really plan around it, but I don't know, it's better. So confusion in this one is when you go to attack someone, even if you're casting a spell. So like if you're over here and you're like, I want to cast a spell at that skeleton, he's evil. Then as you cast, you decide you're facing. Facing is a thing. That's why everything's got a fucking arrow on it. So confused, I pressed the button, decided he would face right so he would be able to successfully do it. Confused, he faces left, you would cast your spell over here. And then, you know, if an ally is there or another enemy is there, can have, you know, dramatically different results. So Ashley was actually using it a lot during one of our test sessions. Confusing enemy spellcasters is super powerful. Especially there was a, what is it, Wizard Boy? Got a wizard enemy that basically summons a gigantic sheet of ice on the ground to make ice tiles. You confuse him, he would just put ice in somewhere completely irrelevant. But it isn't strictly do nothing. It's still some nice random. And random that can dictate what you do on your turn. So if you know you're confused, you're not gonna cast like a fucking meteor that could potentially hit your allies. And of course there's ways to cure conditions and all that. That if you really need it, you got it. It's like a 60-page long. Would you like me to find some relevant details? Number of ways to simulate randomness. Do you have an example of one? Notice all the tokens have a facing. Yeah. So, this is actually played with no diagonals, so when I'm moving a token around, it doesn't have diagonals. It's more like Fire Emblem or any other fucking turn-based system that requires no diagonals. So which direction you're facing is also based on the same way that people are moving. And then classes like Rogue gain bonuses for attacking things behind. So in order to add an extra layer of having your positioning matter and what's on a tile matter, it's also which way you're facing matters. And there's a lot of abilities that are affected by which way you were facing. So Rogue has an ability where he switches the song from the loud jazz to a maybe hopefully calmer jazz. He has one like basically as a reaction. This lich is gonna punch me in the face and it's gonna kill me. He has one where you can move a tile away from your facing, like as a backstep, when you would be hit, so you can avoid damage. And then keeping track of your facing and what is around you continues to be important, because like if there was a fucking wall here, or fire, or something like that, then you wouldn't have that option open to you. Is there a hand-to-hand build? There's not a lot of build stuff yet, but there's a monk class that I was working on. What's the program you're using again? It is called Map Tools. Google Map Tools NERPs, because there is a newer version of it is being made with NERPs, and it's a lot better. Apparently also Map Tools 2.0 is being worked on, which is supposed to integrate NERPs into the main Map Tools branch and like combine everything, and that sounds really good. Equivalent to a tax of opportunity, there is, but also the extra layer that you get because you have facing is that it turned out to be pretty cool if you make facing depend on your tax of opportunity. So if you were behind somebody, they can't attack you, opportunity back here. But otherwise it's kind of exactly how you'd expect from 5th edition, where if you walk away from somebody, they can hit you. It's just they have to be facing that way. Some of the fighter talents that I put in were you know, specific to zone denial kind of stuff, so they can attack of opportunity even behind them kind of stuff. You can design perk selection screens like a nuclear throne. Something like that would actually be kind of interesting. So that you want items to be more important than people in terms of what you can do. How is that going to work? And that might be a wrong way to phrase it, because your character progression definitely gives you some big powers. Just that the limited, like, artifact, trinket slots, or whatever they end up being, that you want to call them on your character, I want them to be profound bonuses. That in the world setting, it can feel like having wealth and having magic items is more important than, growing strong. So like an example is your health staying relatively the same, not having much health scaling, but you can buy better armor. So you effectively have more health because you have better armor, rather than D&D, you start with 8 health and by level 20 you have like 200 because you got stronger and swords hurt you less now. So even for a high-end character, getting stabbed is bad, but you can mitigate that through all the abilities that you have, avoid it, or have armor to reduce it. But yet, getting stabbed is still bad. How does armor work? Not fully figured out yet. I was talking about it a little bit, that the item system is something I need to work on, but I was thinking of just having... Basically, you'd have one armor slot, which would determine your armor, basic stats, stuff like that. Could potentially also be how many consumable item slots you have, so like heavy armor would be more focused on defense, and like an explorer, because it's not like a Diablo where you have armor, shield, amulet, headgear. And it's just a whole armor set. So one could potentially have more consumable slots, less armor, that kind of thing. And then I think the only other thing that I would have would be a trinket slot, which would be a magical kind of bonus thing. Your suggestions will be awful. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. A light armor fighter and a heavy armor fighter might play much differently. Yeah, and I hope that the system can be expanded on by certain class selections. So if you play a character like an artificer, alchemist, like skills within their skill tree would say, okay, you gain an extra consumable slot because this is the character you're playing. You gain an extra trinket slot. That's the kind of character you're trying to build. So you could affect what your equipment is based on your class selection. Then maybe you can also limit like light armor. So obviously, like, you don't have all your mages walking around in heavy armor kind of stuff. Oh, will not be relevant. Well, okay. That's cool. Would armor have passives then? Armors would have passives, yeah, but traditionally the trinket item slot would be more of a powerful magical thing than the armor being magical. But you could certainly have armor that's like, you don't take damage from being pushed into walls. Like, why not? You get into one of those fucking bouncy rolly balls. What were they? Ashley, we watched it on Shark Tank, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Would equipment be something you sort of purchase once and regenerate, or something you'd have to go back to the shop for? My personal belief on that is that I really don't like how Pathfinder 2nd Edition made it so you basically have a potion and then potions require a point to use. Actually, this really isn't that relevant. The setting of the game, generally you're going to be quite wealthy. So it is unreasonable to assume that you couldn't just go to the store and buy more potions. So I lean on the side of saying that once you own a potion, it doesn't make any real-world sense, but it's a gamified version. You have the option to equip healing potion. Though my feeling on consumables need to be worked out, because I also don't like thinking that, like, you can buy healing and undermine someone else who built an actual healer because of how many healing potions you have, kind of thing. Like, I'm fucking rich, I bought 100 healing potions, I want to carry them all. The bottle is the expensive part. Yeah, sure, why not? Wait, is Ster making a game? Kinda, it's really just for fun. It might go somewhere, it might not. Kind of in that phase. So a positioning being an important system, do players have to be very mindful of their formation when walking around? Or is there leeway for pre-battle positioning? Because I haven't really explored the more social world roaming aspects of D&D, I don't 100% know. But I think I would want to lean more towards the sides of, you know, in XCOM you get like a deployment area where it's like the fight has started, and then you can kind of choose where you are before and then the fight starts. It's also a bit weird because through testing I've found that starting surrounded by enemies and already in a fight is much better by a long shot than, for example, starting down here and all of your enemies are, you know, up here. Like, all the time it takes to walk up there and set up the, like, it is much more engaging by, like, a ridiculous amount for you to just start in the shit. Especially the way it works, everybody in your group, the player characters, always go first. So even if it's like, I spawned in and there's this, but I'm fucking surrounded, actually isn't, it's reactable, it's not overwhelming. So you can do that. The problem is, like, obviously within a story, you can't always have it that way. You can't always be like, zombies are around you. Mirelurks appear all around you. You can't just always do that. But it is more fun that way, 100%. So I would lean towards a deployment zone in the middle of enemies whenever possible. Mines spawn underneath you. Basically. That's what I feel with XCOM. Setting up an ambush takes forever. Yeah. Like, it sucks because it's kind of necessary. Like, if you're like, I want to take this mission by stealth, and here's my plan, you go here and I set up here. I would even lean towards saying, like, okay, fine, you guys know the enemies are here. Your deployment zone is this whole area. You've already talked through this. Stealth isn't something that, like, perception checks beat. It's not like, oh, we saw... You guys can set up fucking anywhere you want. Can we skip that? Can we skip the you walking a few tiles a turn and talking about this? Just, you know. Is this a personal opinion, or would you say that to every DM? Every DM for this system. It's worse in this than it is in something like D&D, because in D&D, you know, you can double move 60 feet a turn on most characters. In this, you, by default, can move like 4 tiles. So, for a comparison on this size map... Okay, I guess I was highlighting everything. In D&D... What is 30? Is it 5? No, it'd be 6 tiles. So in D&D, in one turn, you can move like that far. In this, you'd move to here. Okay, next turn. Okay, next turn. Okay, next turn. You see, it's like 4 turns to get to the enemies. It wasn't working out very well. There's no double moving. Is there somewhere where the current status of the work can be viewed? No. If I get it to a certain point where I think it's solid enough, I want to have a website made with all the information on it. I believe my brother and his wife both like do professional web design. Or I could get someone more reliable to work on it. But like I would take it seriously and have a very nice laid out site with the classes and all that. Africa, brother? Yeah, he's actually not in Africa anymore either. He moved to Idaho. But it's super early, so there's no point in showing everything. But it'd be cool at some point to have it functioning. Maybe have a small community of stream boys playing with it. Or at the very least, myself playing with it. I do web design, can send you my portfolio if you want. Wouldn't hurt. I don't think I'll be considering website stuff for a long time. At least a couple months. So don't expect immediate response or anything like that. But I would certainly want more, I don't know, what are website boys using nowadays? Like Flash, kind of, like interactive site stuff, so you could actually, essentially, interactive character sheets, so that you could click on your skill tree and, you know, light things up. Flash is super dead, I know. What are people using? HTML5? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, hook me up with a GeoCities site. I got my website domain on GoDaddy. Wait, no, isn't GeoCities its own? I'm brilliant. Come see me. Cool, OJ Hat. I'm glad you like it. I just, I've been tinkering around with it for about a month now, and I'm kind of directionless in a way. Well, I was working on it, like, in the 2 weeks where I barely streamed at all, I worked on it nearly every single day, all day, for a while. And then stopped, hitting the point where I was like, okay, why am I devoting this much time to something? Is there a reason why I can keep doing this? Is it worth it? And I'm a little bit in the in-between of that now. Because it's fun. Well, for a lot of people, going out drinking is fun, but it'd be irresponsible to do that all day, every day for a week. Every week. But it's certainly still a lot of fun. So, I don't know, it's more of just like... how much time do I reasonably have that I won't feel guilty spending on this? And there has to be some sort of end goal for it to not to want to keep doing it. It's just obvious things you think of. If you had a wiki, you could organize yourself a lot easier and keep track of rules. Everything that I've been doing has been within this program. It's quite easy to organize. So I'd say this is better for me than a wiki. Like, I have information things here where anytime I'm like, oh shit, I need a rule for specific tiles, I've got like what ice does, like all the different tile types, what they could potentially do. Even like a lot of these I haven't even actually used anywhere. I'm just kind of like, oh, that'd be a thing. Status effects. All the spell lists are over here. Anything you click on has extra information on it. So it's organized within the program that I can also play it in. Which is nice. What's your coolest spell? There's two that I personally really like. One is the simple portal spell, which basically you create two portals when you cast the spell. You set their facing, and then it works as, like, you know, the game portal, where if you are a player character, say this is the player character, you enter from here, and if you enter from here, then you come out here in the direction it's facing, and you can also use spells through it. So, like, if you have the range of 8 on a fireball, you say from here to here is 3, then it would come out here, and I can continue the range of this fireball in that direction, which is pretty dope, especially because everything in this game is, there's no diagonals for a lot of spells. Like, spells can specifically be only cardinal directions, so that could help you manipulate it goes through here, comes out here, kind of thing. So I like that one a lot. Another cool one is the conduit, which I forget exactly how it works. I believe there's a channeling mechanic in the game where, so you cast this spell, and for as long as the conduit exists, you are considered to be channeling. Channeling is like, what's it called in D&D? Concentration. So if you're hit while you're channeling, you can be interrupted and you'll lose your channel. And channeled effects go off at the end of a round, generally. But this one works a little bit weirder, so you have to channel the conduit the entire time it exists. So you can be hit to interrupt it. And as long as the conduit exists, it duplicates a spell that you cast when you cast it from the astral spell tree. So all this shit is the astral spells. So if you're like, I'm over here and I want to cast Blasting Barrier, it pushes everything away from me and deals damage. So it would explode around you and deal that, and also your conduit would do the same thing. So I like that one a lot. You can't have a mage with no cones. The game is about the cones, trust me. They're just, you can't see them yet. Well, I've got to get out of here. Thanks for answering questions. No problem. I hope you find a justification to continue with this. Me too. I mean, I feel like if I keep working on it, it'll hit like a certain point where the justification to continue will be much more obvious. Like, if I can just get it to the point where I would run a D&D game on this instead of D&D, because I've always wanted to stream a D&D campaign that I DM, and then I would totally want to use this instead of D&D. Like, if I can get it to that point, and then it's playable enough that other people would be interested in it, like, the justification for continuing, you know, quadruples at that point. But I think until that point, it'll be a little bit slower along the road. Eastern Jab. Any idea how I can break free of this loop of giving up on your ideas? I mean, no matter what idea you have, it's gonna be really hard to stick with it. You just... I don't know, the only advice I have is just you have to do it. Even if it seems bad at times, I guess bad is the wrong term, because if it seems bad, then you should stop. But if it's something that you like doing, that you want to be doing, and that shows its promise, then I think in this situation, like what I'm talking about, it's more about how much time you can find to devote to it rather than giving up on it. I've given up on a lot of things in my day, so I know that feel. That's just kind of, you're being a human right now. That sucks. If it seems bad, failure is an experience in of itself, basically. Fail faster. What do you DM? All homebrewed or a module or what? Basically everything I've ever played is homebrewed. I ran a Pathfinder campaign, 2 of them, and was planning on doing a 5th edition one, but I kind of hit a point where I don't know, I had more fun working on this, so I stopped working on the campaign, and it reached a point of like just admitting how much I didn't like about 5th edition or Pathfinder, because 5th edition kind of introduced me to, okay, I started with Pathfinder first, realized Pathfinder kind of sucks, because 5th edition makes it easier, and cuts out a lot of the bloat. So I admit it, 5th edition is better, but 5th edition doesn't actually solve any of the it like makes it simpler, cuts out the bloat, but doesn't solve the problems that they both have. And then, honestly, I contribute a lot of working on this to thinking about what a Diablo mobile game would look like before they announced it. And then they announced it, and then I was severely disappointed and had a lot of ideas I wanted to get out. A melee range shocking spell that suffocates opponents. Baby. There's a little bit of that, what essentially suffocating is, but it's more flavored towards the poison spells that remove mana from people. Because there's no magic armor. Yee. I think at some point I should be going, right? Surprised I got 3 hours out of this. This is great though. Yeah, it would be nice to do more just talking streams. They're fun. More time to read chat and just think. Been seeing a lot of people doing them lately, honestly. I was joking the other day that like Justin TV had to stop existing so that Twitch TV could exist and become gaming content, but then people got bored of gaming, so they all did just talking, and now just talking is popular enough and more people are doing it, so we need Justin TV again. Where's Justin TV at? It's right here. It's weird how many times Twitch has fought against being a gaming... Like, we need to be games only. But I guess we'll accept all this other shit. I guess it's better that we embrace it. Also, maybe at some point should set up my webcam. That would help. Then you all could, like, look at my wiener while I do nothing, because the screen's not changing. Your Twitch sings beta yet? No. I don't know what that is. But what I do know is that I was offered an alpha key to Anthem. I don't think I would be allowed to stream it. I imagine not. I think that's happening tomorrow. I don't know if I'm actually getting it, but I'm excited about that. I think Anthem will suck. 100% I think Anthem will be a repeat of The Division. I think it's gonna blow. But I'm also deeply curious if that's true and why it's true. in line with the game design talk and all this whole stream, sometimes a really bad game is very fascinating to me. I think me and Ashley both talked about No Man's Sky after it launched for like a week of what would have made it better and why it wasn't good. So, Anthem being a bad game doesn't stop me from being really interested to play it. Number 1, fish. Has fish, Ashley. You played The Division recently? Yeah, I heard it got a lot of good updates. I know they're making The Division 2, but it still looks like more of the same to me. Before it did. No, when it launched, it had fish. They're just super rare. Fix it later. I don't know. Every enemy is like super bullet spongy, level scaled, uninteresting, stands around, waits for you to fight them. It really does to me. I've said since the beginning, it looks exactly like The Division. Like, I'm shocked the same studio didn't make it with how... Like, even their presentation at E3 had the fake people on the mics pretending to be playing The Division. Like, exactly how The Division was presented. It's crazy to me. So I don't know. I hope they've at least learned from some of The Division's mistakes and they don't make a bad game, but I'm not expecting much. Other things, there were other games. The Game Awards were last night. Pretty excited for, what is it, Outer Worlds? What is it called? Outer Worlds? I mean, we've been playing Fallout lately, and it's just the Fallout New Vegas people made a new Fallout that isn't Fallout. So that's cool. Which game won the award? I think it was God of War. Outer Worlds. Yay! Shitting on Bethesda, the game. My only concern with Outer Worlds is that it needs modding support. Because if it's just Fallout New Vegas, but, like, their own thing, I really need it to be moddable. It still, like, needs that extra kick. Oh yeah, and there was Atlas, which looks like it's just trying to be good Sea of Thieves. But something tells me, as much as you really want to play good Sea of Thieves, it can't possibly be that, right? I've had this happen too many times where, like, it gets your hopes up, like, oh shit, like, this is that thing we want to play, but someone else is doing it, and they're doing it better, they're doing it right this time. But I get the same feeling. It's just like it's gonna come out, and it's just gonna be like a buggy fucking mess. It's from Ark, so yeah, that's kind of why I'm saying, like, I feel like it's not gonna have the polish, it's gonna have a lot of bugs. It's not gonna run right, it's not gonna feel right. And then it's gonna fall apart. Also, it's starting in early access, so I don't fucking... I hope for the best. That's usually my stance on games. I hope for the best, but don't expect much. And then you're pleasantly surprised when it proves you wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. Open mind. I don't know if there was anything else coming out. Oh wait, didn't Ashen, like, come out on Epic Games Store? Wanted to try that too. Me and Arcada might play that in the coming days. I think they fucked themselves and had really loosely shambled together multiplayer like Dark Souls does, so it'll be hard to play together. CSGO Battle Royale. Yeah, I watched Flom play it for quite a bit yesterday, and it doesn't look that fun to me. In a weird way, it felt like too much like Counter-Strike, and I just never have been able to enjoy Counter-Strike. It's not it's not a bad thing. It's just a personal thing. That's all. It's not you. Pathless was beautiful. Yeah, that was that archery game, I believe. Running around on a fox shooting bows. I don't know. Waiting for Doom and Rage 2. God damn it. But what about being a monkey? Yeah, what about being a monkey? There's not enough discussion about being a monkey. Where's my... where's... What if you just played more Doom? I already beat it twice. I don't know. I'd considered playing through it one more time at various points in my life. But then I didn't. I need new. No, I don't have pressure sensitivity. Means anything I draw is gonna suck. Which was always the case. I think I need to eat dinner. Oh shit! I'm actually really excited for Median XL Sigma to come out January 18th. Diablo 2 Supermod I used to play a lot of. Dude, they're fucking doing a better job of like Diablo 2 remaster than Blizzard can ever do. Blizzard's turned into such a fucking dog pile. I hope so much that they don't like Blizzard doesn't interfere with it in any way like they did with Vanilla WoW or something like that. Like I'm gonna be really disappointed if Blizzard steps in on it or something. Now you've cursed it. Oh god. They've always avoided being like, they've always had servers that have been hosted in places where apparently Blizzard can't really do much about it. Ew. So they'd never run into any problems with hosting their servers. But I don't know if this time's different. That's gonna be real fucking sad, because seriously, the amount of polish and like shit that they've fixed in that game is hard to imagine Blizzard coming out and doing the same with a remaster. They've rebuilt the fucking engine and like everything. Just give the guys high fives and hire them or something. I don't know. What would happen if Blizzard released Median XL Sigma as like a Diablo expansion, like made it official? They're just like, you know what, you guys are awesome, we'll buy it from you, and we'll sell it, and wanna do something else with us? We keep losing people. People keep leaving Blizzard. How about you join us? We need you. But you don't want to play Diablo 2 anyways, we already made a better version of that game. Median XL is great. If you never tried it, I hope you check out the streams in January. See what it's about. This is basically some of the people that moved on to work on aspects of Path of Exile had hands in making Median XL. Like Brother Laz was one of the big contributors to creating Median XL, and I believe he did a lot of item designs in Path of Exile. Path of Exile shares a lot of the same design goals of like having currency be objects that also do things. Like getting rid of gold and having every item in the game have value in some way or another. And it's got really nifty boss fights. I don't know what I'm doing. This is a nose. It's a gross witch nose thing. Who knows? Not I. This is you, chat. Got him. I mean, got him. I'm cool. I mean, can't tell the difference. My nose looks like a pickle, and pickles are gross. And that is the part I hated about Path of Exile PogChamp. Nice. I've wanted to play Median XL again for years, but the one thing about Diablo 2 is that you can't... Like, all of your skills are on either left mouse or right mouse or whatever, and to change skills you had to scroll through them, and you could only have one active one at a time. So you had to, like, switch to a skill and then use the skill, and it's, like, fucking clunky and awful. Paladins could only have an aura active one at a time because you'd have to have that slot open as an aura. So they fixed that. They made the game widescreen and high resolution and redid all the fucking menus. I can't believe they actually, like I had hoped, but they actually did it. Got an unholy paladin with like 19 keybinds. It is rough. I just didn't want to deal with that again, but I wanted to play. That, and there were high-resolution patches for Diablo 2 that have existed for a long time, but the monster aggro range didn't exist beyond your default view. So, like, you could see more, but it was not right. It was more of like a cheat than anything. The only thing that bugs me about Path of Exile is how zoomed in it is. I wish that weren't the case. Why am I drawing this? Thanks for hanging out with me, Chad. It was a fun stream. This is you. Haha. Got 'em. This is what you get. Alright, I'm done then. Hurt my feelings, streamer.
We're a growing boy. Growing boy. Growing boy!
Oh my god, what does Stu Pickles look like? This almost looks like a fucking coked up, insane Stu Pickles right now. Or am I remembering how he looks wrong? He's showing us fuckable. Yeah, this is what your character needs to look like. Fuckable. Heck yeah. Thanks, Meowix. Thank you. Stu Pickles look like an alcoholic? He did. He had really big bags most of the time. He got punched in the face by Danger Daddy. Or Daddy Danger. I don't remember my own character. Well, if he got punched in the face, his head would have exploded, so never mind. What are we chatting about? Nothing. I think I'm gonna go. That really was 3.5 hours of talking about thing. Glad that even one person was interested. So thanks everyone for showing up. I really do appreciate it. I have some thinking to do. Certainly the takeaway for me is to just ignore my problems for now on the design and go in a different direction and come back to it when I have more things I can leverage for classes. Well, I'm going to consider keep thinking about the starting novice perk system, because I think that's probably the best route. And what I really want to accomplish so that I don't fall into the trap of trying to cater to every potential player and miss out on a good design because I tried to make it too accessible. Still want it to be very accessible and easy and quick for tabletop style thing, but don't want to ignore a good idea because I think someone might not like it. That's dumb. It's not dumb, it's just there's already stuff for that person. Give him a soul patch. Well, I can't. I put my pen down. Ah! Drop my book. Anyway, guys. Eat my ass.